and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing another sit down chatty video because we are still in the beginning stages of potty training and it's just easiest to make videos when Remy's sleeping. So I feel like we are finally at a place though that I think next week I'll be able to do more of like my regular style video, but this week just wanted to do another like sit down chatty video, and it worked out well because I've been saying for a while that I was going to do a breastfeeding journey video and I never did. And now that I'm expecting our third and I'm thinking about breastfeeding again, and I'm in the third trimester, so just kind of planning, prepping, I guess, more so planning like how I want to go about that has got me looking back at my experience with Remy and like what I want to do different. So I figured it's the perfect time to kind of go ahead and share my breastfeeding journey with Remy. So if you didn't already know, I breastfed obviously my son, and it started off really rough, and I like would share a little bit about this like on Instagram, and I shared it with like my close friends, family, all that, so they know, but I don't know how much I actually shared on here. But I had a really rough experience, especially in the beginning, and the reason I feel like that happened was because like my experience at the hospital, like our first feeds and all that, and how that went and how the hospital went about that. I just feel like it kind of really screwed things up. And also, before I get into this video too far, I just want to say like I totally support anyone who doesn't want to breastfeed because it's really hard, and also pumping, and also, which is breastfeeding, but also formula feeding, it's all hard. Like washing the bottles, feeding a baby, it's a lot of work. So I support any type of way you want to feed your baby. I really wanted to be able to breastfeed my son, and there were times I almost gave up. There's times he's had formula. There are times that I just like would pump instead because I just didn't know what to do, because it was just a rough beginning experience. But I'm glad I stuck it out because I was able to make it work eventually. But just know I totally think fed is best, and fed is best. So no pressure if you're watching this video having a really hard time, about to give up, and that might just be what's best for you. Honestly, it could have maybe been what was best for me in the beginning. But I am still glad I stuck with it at the time because I ended up having a really good experience once we finally got the hang of it. But I'll go ahead and share my experience in the hospital because that's kind of where everything went wrong. So after Remy was born, we had like our whole family at the hospital, and everyone wanted to see Remy, and like, you know, you're supposed to spend those first hours or so like with your baby, skin to skin, breastfeeding, but I felt kind of like I needed to hurry because I wanted everyone to meet him, and I also wanted Andrew to be able to have skin to skin time, and I didn't realize how important skin to skin time is at the beginning for moms, especially when you want to breastfeed. So I feel like I kind of rushed our skin to skin breastfeeding moments in the beginning because I wanted Andrew to have time, and then I wanted our family to have time. So I kind of like really rushed it, and I really wish I did not do that, because as soon as Remy came out, he was already suckling and looking for my breast, and he literally, like, our first latch was great and everything was smooth, but I felt like I kind of rushed it, and I feel like I didn't really even let him get enough, because like as soon as he like somewhat unlatched, I don't even know if he wasn't hungry anymore, like I just like gave him to Andrew because I was like, I want Andrew to be able to hold him. And then we were like welcoming family in, and I didn't even know how often a baby needed to breastfeed then, and they weren't really telling me about it yet, I guess because he was just born. But like basically I feel like he didn't feed again for a while because he was just like being held by family members, and like, yeah. So anyways, that was my first mistake, was to rush the time after he was born with skin to skin and breastfeeding, and that's something I will definitely not do this time. I don't even know, we're not sure what we're gonna do, but I definitely don't think I'll have visitors in the hospital the first day because I want to really make sure we get that going, depending on what time he's born. Like if he's born in the morning and I have lots of time to like get all that together, that works. But if he's born in the evening, I probably won't have visitors the first day because that time is just so important if you want to breastfeed, and I kind of screwed that up the first time. So anyways, because of that, the next time we went to latch, it did not go so well, and I feel like it's definitely because of that, because his first experience was like literally the perfect experience, like crawling to the breast, latched right away, and everything was great. The next experience, like, I don't even know if it was actually bad at this point. I was just told by the nurses, if you feel any kind of discomfort, unlatch. But the thing is, you're gonna feel discomfort when your when your nipples aren't used to breastfeeding. So of course I felt discomfort. So it was kind of frustrating because everyone's like, oh, you have a great latch, and I was like, oh, but it does feel uncomfortable. So they're like, unlatch if it feels uncomfortable. So I would like unlatch and do it again, unlatch and do it again, and then he was just like done. He's like, no. So then he'd be too tired, fall back asleep. We'd have to try again later. And every time someone saw him nursing, they were like, he has a great latch. They're like, but if it feels uncomfortable, unlatch. So in my mind, any discomfort, I needed to unlatch. And the thing is, what I've heard is generally what happens when you're breastfeeding for the first time, or like not even the first time, but with your newborn, is it's uncomfortable for the first 2 weeks. That's what I've heard. But I didn't hear that before this, and so I didn't know. Anyways, because this kept happening, like every time he was supposed to feed, like, so it happened, and then it happened maybe again, and then they were like, we're going to just like have you pump, because if it's uncomfortable, we don't want you like feeding him, and he needs to get some milk, so let's just have you pump, see how that goes. The pumping went great. I fed him a bottle, which is totally fine, but like when you want to breastfeed, it's like, it's good that, like, I'm glad I did, because of how everything was going, he probably wasn't getting enough milk. So I'm totally glad I gave him a bottle. But I just, again, like, it was another thing to kind of put a wrench in the breastfeeding experience. So the rest of my experience at the hospital, like, I would try to latch him. If it was uncomfortable, I pumped and then gave him a bottle. And yeah, he got really, really used to the bottle. And by the time we were going to leave the hospital, like, he wasn't really latching well at all anymore. And he preferred the bottle. And everyone said, like, so once, I mean, when I say he wasn't latching well, he wasn't latching comfortably. So everyone said the latch looked good though. But it was hard to believe because I was just like in so much pain and all that. And like, I honestly just didn't know anything about breastfeeding. Like, I went into this literally blind, not knowing one thing. And so I just really wish I would have like kind of knew more and like kind of just stuck it out. Like, even if it was a little painful at first, like, I had brought nipple cream, I had brought my silverettes, and like, I wish I would have just like pushed through the pain and made it work, because not doing that made for a much more painful experience. So anyways, it's time to leave the hospital, and he is still latching kind of painfully. and the lactation consultant there was kind of like freaking out because he had like jaundice, but it was such a little amount of jaundice, like nobody was concerned about it at all. And none of my actual nurses were concerned at all, and they thought my latch looked great and they were being super supportive. But the lactation consultants were like, you can't, like, if you're taking him home, you need to take formula, or you need to take donor milk, or you need to do something, and like, because he needs to be eating, and if it, you know, if this isn't like flowing smoothly for you, like, you need to get formula in him, which totally true. Like, if it's not going well, like, you just got to do formula. You got to do what works, or you got to, at that point, pumping was going really smooth, so I could have just pumped. But I felt like super pressured by my lactation consultant to give formula, which kind of seems odd because it's like a lactation consultant. It was a weird experience with the lactation consultants. The nurses were great. The lactation consultants, not so great. But anyways, my nurses were like kind of rolling their eyes like, her latch looks good. We're not concerned. He barely has jaundice. Like, I think she's got this. But the lactation consultant put so much fear in me. So that night, because we left at night, when I got home, I gave him a bottle. And then that night is the night where the baby's like literally drinking all night. Like, you're up all night. And I was not prepared for that at all. And so I just did not know how to function, and I formula fed all night because I was like, there's no way I'm going to try to breastfeed when things are not going smooth and I'm not pumping. Like, this is like, I am not going to be up longer than I need to. Like, I was just like not realizing all that went into having a newborn because it was my first time bringing a newborn home. So I formula fed all night because it was just felt the easiest. Like, you just put the formula in the bottle, and they gave me pre-made formula bottle like things that you just open and put the cap on. And so I literally just had to put a cap on, and I did that the entire night, which that night is supposed to be when your like milk supplies come in and like your baby feeding is supposed to like jumpstart that. Luckily, my milk still came in that morning. My boobs were gigantic and I had a huge supply of milk. But that morning, I tried to do breastfeeding again. He wanted absolutely nothing to do with my boobs. Like, literally nothing. He did not even want to try to put his mouth on it. He was entirely like nipple confused from the bottle tip. So all he wanted was the feeling of the bottle tip. He thought the feeling of the nipple was the most disgusting thing ever. So I was so sad because I really wanted to breastfeed and it just wasn't working out. And looking back, honestly, a lot of that's my fault for not looking into it more. But also, I just had such a weird experience in the hospital with lactation consultants. I feel like I got bad advice. But yeah, it was a total mess. Like, he just wanted nothing to do with it. So I had tried, it didn't work. So I pumped, gave him that. I think I might have gave him formula, but then I also like pumped because I was huge and I needed to get some of that milk out. So I then called my sister because she was in town. She stayed in town. She's from out of town, but she stayed in town since Remy was just born because like she wanted to see him and all that. And she had her daughter like 7 months earlier, had a hard time breastfeeding for the first couple months, maybe first month actually. I can't remember, but she had a rough go at it at first, but got the hang of it and was like, it's so awesome once you do, but it's so hard in the beginning. So I already knew about her experience, so I really trusted her and wanted her to come over and help. And she tried everything, every tip she was taught to get him to latch, and he would not latch. So I'm like sitting there like, I feel like I literally was like looking in his closet and there is formula and I'm like, this is just what we're gonna do. Like, I'm not I can't. He doesn't want to, like, and I was so emotional about it. And then Andrew, my saint of a husband, was just like looking all over the internet for like things we could do. And my sister was calling a lactation consultant from a different hospital because I had such a bad experience at the hospital I went to. So she was calling a lactation consultant, and basically she's like, I could come to class later that week, but I wanted help like right away because like he literally wasn't doing anything. So my husband found a lactation consultant that was local, and he called her and she's like, I can be there in a half hour. So thankfully she showed up for his next feed, and it wasn't going smooth. He wanted nothing to do with my nipple again, but she introduced me to a nipple shield, and he would feed from the nipple shield. So I was thinking, this is amazing. Like, I just needed him to get to like my breast, and now everything's gonna work because I just needed this to kind of get him to want to feed in this area and not from a bottle. But now that we have this, I can like probably take it off for my next feed or tomorrow, and he'll be back on the nipple and everything will be good. No, he still obviously wanted the feeling of the rubber and nothing to do with my nipple. So I saw my lactation consultant for about 2 months after he was born, and throughout that time I was mostly on the nipple shield, but she kind of gave me some tips here and there of like how to like kind of, you know, get him to want the nipple, and nothing really worked, but I think just consistently trying every once in a while kind of helped. I was looking back through messages I sent to my sister, and his first time latching on my nipple, like since the hospital, was a month after he was born. I think it was like January 29th, and he was born December 27th. So that was the first time I actually got him to latch, but it was just like one feeding and then he wouldn't do it again, any other feeding. So I started to do that again. Like, I waited till it was like the 2 o'clock feeding was always the feeding he was kind of open to nursing on my nipple, but any of the other feedings he wanted nothing to do with it. But for some reason, maybe he wasn't as hungry that feeding, maybe he was tired, I don't know. But when the 2 o'clock feeding came around, I started to be able to introduce it. But actually, like after that first time he latched, it took like a couple weeks before he would latch again. But once like I started getting him to latch here and there, I would just try it every day. And only if he only latched for like a minute or two, I was like, okay, now I'll put the nipple shield on, we'll make it work, whatever. So after doing that for a couple weeks or so, he started to like, I started to try like for other feeds, and like slowly every day trying, like he finally started to latch, and it was like the most insane thing ever. Like, I could not believe it because he had not like latched onto my nipple the first like 2 months of his life, basically. Like, oddly, like once or twice within the first 2 months, or like he barely latched at all. And then all of a sudden around 2 months it started to kind of click for him, and he was latching, but it was so painful because, and let me tell you, even when I was using the nipple shield, it was so painful. Like, my nipples the entire first 3 months of breastfeeding were shook. Like, they were in so much pain. I would like bleed. They were cracking. They literally hurt so bad, but I stuck it out because I wanted it so bad. And I just kept hanging on to my sister's words that one day he's gonna latch, and it's gonna be different, and it's gonna go smoothly. And I know that's honestly not everyone's case, but I just held on to those words. And by the time 3 months came around, he was latching without the nipple shield, and had been for like a couple weeks for every feed. And I like really couldn't believe it because it was so rough. I didn't know a lot of people at that time who had any issues breastfeeding. Only my sister really, and everyone else seemed to have like the smoothest breastfeeding journey. And I definitely felt like giving up so many times, but at that point, like, I was so far into it. I was like, I'm just used to it at this point. I'm used to the pain. Like, this is what I know. But me and Andrew were both like, we would constantly be like, should we do this? Like, I don't know. Is this gonna be what's best? And honestly, if I would have switched to formula, it would have been totally fine. And I would have not been feeling as stressed as I was. I would have not been in the pain I was. And everything would have been smooth. But I just really wanted this. And I'm glad I ended up sticking it out because I made it work. But it took so much work, so much time. And you really, really, really have to like go through some really rough times to get there sometimes. It was rough. But I'm so glad it took 3 months to really get him to nurse well. But anyways, I'm just glad that he did, because after that, I nursed him for, I think, 19 months. A little over 19 months. And I just stopped when I felt like, you know, I think we're ready. Like, I probably could have went till he was 2, but I just kind of felt like he was at a point where he wasn't like asking for it. Like, he kind of went off our routine. And so I was like, if I keep going, when he starts talking, like, he'll probably ask for it and it will be a lot harder to stop. So I was like, I'm just going to try it, see what happens. And it went really well. I started reading him, because I was like feeding to sleep at that point. I started reading him books and singing him songs and rocking him. He fell asleep and it went really smooth. So I stopped around 19 months, and it was honestly an amazing journey from 3 months to the 19-month mark. But those first 2.5 to 3 months were so rough. So now that I'm expecting my next baby, I definitely plan on doing some things differently, and these are the things I want to do differently. Okay, I basically told you already because of how my experience went, but first I want to make sure to like have him on my chest breastfeeding right away, like, if possible. I know sometimes it's not possible, but if everything goes as planned, everything goes smoothly, that's what I want. And I probably won't have visitors the first day, depending how that all goes. So I definitely just want to give a lot of time to that. And I do want Andrew to be able to hold him, but I'm definitely going to make sure he gets like a good feed in, good chest time with me before I do that. Andrew wants that for me too, because yeah, after last experience, he's like, I just want to make that work for you smoother if it's possible. So anyways, that's the plan, is just to really spend the first hour, 2 hours, like, with him on me, at least the first hour. I definitely want to make sure Andrew gets to hold him soon after he's born too, but like, I just need to make sure that we get a good start. And then after that, my second thing is to like push through the discomfort. Now I know what a good latch feels like too, so that really helps. So I think like pushing through the beginning discomfort and not like unlatching every single time if he seems to be sucking and getting it and everyone thinks it's a good latch and I feel like it's a good latch, then I'm just going to push through the pain. And I'm going to bring my nipple cream again, and I'm going to bring my silverette cups, and I'm going to actually use them in the hospital because I didn't last time. Third thing I'm going to do differently is nurse him the whole night, his first night home, instead of give him a bottle, Lord willing, because that really seemed to be what, you know, set him over the edge. Like, I am only going to take rubber now. I do not want your nipple. I feel like it was that first night that really did that. So I'm about to get blinded here, so 1 second. So those are the 3 things I'm gonna do differently, and I might think of more, but like at the moment, I'm thinking about like those first 3 days, because that's like really what kind of sets you up, I feel like, or, you know, does the opposite. So I really just want to make sure those first 3 days go smoothly. Like, I've thought about not even having visitors the first 3 days, but I don't know. Like, I want to kind of go with the flow, but I'm just gonna, yeah, play it by ear, see how things go, and just make sure everything goes smoothly before all that, because it is a lot. Like, at the beginning, when you are like breastfeeding and it's going rough, like, you have visitors coming like every day. We had visitors coming every day and like different times, and like literally at the beginning, breastfeeding is all you do. Like, you're literally breastfeeding all day long. Like, I think I had looked back, I can't remember, but basically, I'm trying to think of how much time I spent breastfeeding. It was like 12 hours a day or something. Like, it was like insane. Like, maybe that counted some of the night feeds, I can't remember, but I was like, wow, you really don't realize how much goes into breastfeeding, how long it takes for them to get their feed in. Like, he was feeding for like an hour for so long. Like, his feeds were an hour long, and then it was so nice. I think probably around 3 months is when they went down to like 30 minutes to 40 minutes. And then eventually they got to 15 minutes, and then eventually even smaller. So it's crazy how much time breastfeeding takes, and I had no clue. So now that I know that, I feel like I'm going into this a little better. But if you don't know anything about breastfeeding, look into it, because it is a lot of work, and it's something you won't be prepared for until you're like in it. But like, it's nice to prepare yourself in the best way possible if you want to make it work, because it's rough. But with all that, sometimes things happen and it just doesn't work, and I get that. And I also want my mind to be ready for anything like that too, because there's some things that happen either with like how the baby's mouth is or whatever that make it not possible to breastfeed. And so I also want to be able to like take that in and think about it, and not like rely solely on the fact that like I'm going to breastfeed no matter what. So anyways, I hope me sharing my mistakes, all that, is helpful for you if you're someone like looking to breastfeed, or someone like going through it. If it helps just knowing like eventually, if your things were similar to mine, it can get better. But either way, just know feeding your baby is the best thing either way. No matter how you feed them, you're doing the best for your baby. So, and that is just like hard like to believe when you're like really want something to go one way and it goes the other. It's hard to like tell yourself that, but trust me, it's the best. Anyways, mamas, you're doing a great job, and just, I know that we all want what's best for our babies, and I just hope that this video is more encouraging than anything. But yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you in my next one.